Hey, welcome to episode 2, Work Commute, Let's Chat. I'm Scott Velasquez. I'm a longtime game developer, tech enthusiast, gamer, esports fan, soccer dad, all that. So I talk about a bunch of various things, things that are going on in my life at a particular time. And as you know, my work commute is very long. It's 45 minutes, depending on the time. Coming home can be even worse, looking at like an hour or something like that. But anyway, I figured, hey, well, let's do this. It makes my commute a little more useful and entertaining, makes the time go faster on my end, and hey, maybe I, impact some of you guys that are watching on your end. So yeah, what can we talk about? So one thing I was thinking of when I got in was there was this really good tweet that was sent out by, I forget, somebody I followed actually retweeted it because I didn't follow this guy at the time, but he had this really good tweet where he was sort of reflecting on the internet and how we've sort of progressed over time, trials and tribulations and whatnot. And it turned into this really great thread. I shared it. I thought it was amazing. Everybody else had the same feelings too, and he's got tens of thousands of retweets, tens of thousands of likes. But anyway, let me go ahead and read that. I have something here just so I can read it. So it looks like his Twitter name, if you want to follow him, is Irwin, IRWIN. And he says, "I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Gopher, Netscape with frames, the first browser wars, searching for pages with AltaVista, man, pop-up windows with self-replicating behavior, that was super annoying. Trying to uninstall RealPlayer, oh God, RealPlayer. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain, time to die." And man, that just sparked some really amazing sort of conversations in Twitter in his comments, ranging from, more people reflecting back on the internet, early internet when they were young, depending on their age. And then we all started talking about computer stuff, and then of course it bled into video games and cell phones and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think it'd be kind of fun to talk about. Man, I wish I had a co-host. That's on my to-do list, is to figure out how can I record this while I'm driving, but get somebody else on the conversation with me, because I'm probably boring, who knows. But no, I think it'd be a lot more fun if I had somebody else. So yeah, just, thinking about my childhood with the internet. Let's see, let's go back. So my parents got divorced when I was around 10. So my mom moved to California, my dad stayed in Texas, lived with him. So every summer I would go out and spend some time with my mom. And, they were doing pretty good over there. And then, technology was definitely a much bigger thing there than in West Texas where we lived. So I still didn't have a computer, and I went out there one summer, and she had an Apple Macintosh. I think it was the first one, actually. That was the first time I'd ever used a mouse, the first time I'd ever used a graphical interface on a computer. So I was sort of just floored, and she was showing me the basics of how to use a mouse and how to launch an application. But anyway, so what I remember is just the graphical interface, the color, some really great games like Prince of Persia. I don't know if you played that one back in the day. Maybe I can find a clip and add that on here somewhere. But there was still no internet, obviously, at that time. Let's see, thinking about school, sometime in high school, maybe, yeah, I want to say like 9th grade, we had like Apple IIe's for our typing class. Nobody takes typing anymore, but that must have been middle school, because we didn't have typewriters, because we had typewriters in high school, and I took that too. It's probably why I type so fast today. But in middle school, me and a friend of mine found out that you could actually drop down to like the basic prompt in the typing class. And so we'd write these little things that we just thought would be funny. We'd write these little math formulas and set it to run in an infinite loop, and it would print out how many times it was able to calculate it. And we would just, at the end of the class, we would set it to run, and if we were lucky, the next day it would still be going. But no, typically, one of our friends in the next class would tell us how fast it got, what number it got up to. So we goofed around with that for a little bit. So internet-wise, thinking about like providers and stuff like that, I just like other people started with like CompuServe and AOL. Oh, AOL was amazing too, because we had the they would mail everybody diskettes, 3.5-inch diskettes. you know, hey, install this, here's our software, you know. So a lot of my family would get them in the mail. They didn't necessarily use the internet, so I started collecting those bad boys because that was some sweet free storage. I'm sure a lot of people did that too, and repurposed those things, and eventually I transitioned to CDs and whatnot. Got away from AOL, which, as everybody knows, that had its own sort of innovations with email and you've got mail and all that stuff. Transitioned over to a local internet company in Abilene, West Texas, and called Camelot. That was pretty fun. You know, that was, I think, 14.4 dial-up at the time, and you know, dial-up had its own issues. You know, I mean, it was great to get online, but you know, as always, somebody picking up the phone at your house, or you know, you having to leave a note, say, hey, don't pick up the phone, I'm playing a game, or I'm downloading a file, please don't interrupt me. And then, you know, it's fun to watch a transition from, you know, 14.4 to 28.8 and 33.6 and 56K modems. You know, it just kept getting faster and faster. Speaking of which, you know, like back then, you know, people that had the money or could get the money, they would get these T1, like really fast internet connections to their house. And I don't know how many there were in Abilene. There's quite a few, but get this T1 connection to their house, start a business, and then they would subdivide that T1 into dial-up. You know, so they kind of were this mom and pop internet provider. So I actually went and talked to one of these guys because I ran across them in IRC. You know, who remembers like IRC chat and all that good stuff. They were making a text-based mud multiplayer game. They're like, hey, you got some interest in joining us? I'm like, man, that sounds pretty cool. You know, I want to get into software development. Let's go check it out. And drove over there. You know, just had my license. I think I was 15. I got mine kind of early to help take my sister to school and all that. But went over there and checked it out, and seemed really cool. But at the same time, you know, being sort of a kid, I was a little bit freaked out that, you know, all these dudes are over here working out of somebody's house. And so I didn't pursue it. Kicking myself now, but you know, it is what it is. What else do we have? Let's see, internet. So finally got my first computer in like what, sophomore year, junior year. It was a 386. Those things were expensive back in the day. I remember my dad, you know, like, you know, me just going back and forth with him, like, Dad, we need a computer, we need a computer. And man, you know, thankfully he did, you know, thank you, Dad, for doing that. He had to go out and take like a huge loan out, you know, and they would take money, they would draft it out of his check, but it was like, I'll say it's like $3,000 or $4,000 just for like basic 386, terrible monitor, and a printer. I think we got a printer at the time. And yeah, he paid that thing off. But that was awesome. I mean, that really opened my eyes, because I had a lot more time at home to play around with computers, and really opened my eyes to like what could be done on a computer. Because up until then, I didn't really have a whole lot of exposure. Minus, you know, there's some guys when I was like 8 or 9 probably. There's these rich dudes. We always called them the rich dudes, but they were some friends of a friend, and they were the only ones that in the neighborhood had a computer. You know, they had another IBM PC. So we'd go over there and they'd pull out all these 5 1/4 floppies, and they had like, you know, California games and you know, not Need for Speed, I forget what it was called back then, but a racing game. And man, that was cool back then, thinking to do that. So anyways, back to my PC. Yeah, you know, I started buying games, you know, figuring out what the computer could actually do. This was all DOS based. So yeah, I got, you know, my copy of California games, picked up like John Madden, you know, Jordan versus Bird, you know, I still have those. And what's funny about those games is back then, you know, the way that they authenticated that you actually made a purchase, because it was really easy to copy these discs. You know, they're just floppy disks. You know, yeah, they may have like a writable thing, but that's really easy to cover up with a piece of tape. But the way they authenticated back then was awesome, because like, I think it was Madden came with a spin wheel, and it had like multiple levels to it that you would spin, and the game would boot up and it would quiz you, and it's like, okay, you know, pull out your, I forget the term they used, but let's say spin wheel. Get out your spin wheel and turn to, you know, section 4 of because it looked like a football stadium. Section 4, seat 35, you know, what's the number at this? So you turn it around and put your little code in. So that was pretty neat. I don't, you know, there was lots of really cool games too I got turned on to. I don't know how, you know, probably just random bulletin boards and web pages, but you know, thinking about authentication, Leisure Suit Larry, for you old folks out there. That game cracked us up. You know, I would bring my friends over too, and it was one of those, you know, teenage boy things too, where it was kind of riding the line about, you know, things that teenagers should or shouldn't see. But they, you know, they pixelated things and stuff like that. But there were some funny situations. But anyways, it authenticated by asking you a bunch of questions that only somebody your age would know. And again, you know, the internet, I don't think the internet was even really much of a thing then. It wasn't like you could just go to Google and type in the question, get the answer. But that was hilarious. We just had a good time, like, trying to figure out these answers to these questions. And, you know, after so many wrong answers, it would lock you out and you'd have to, like, restart the game. It was really funny. Let's see, internet, you know, played a lot of Duke Nukem 3D, to the extent of, you know, people that know me know these stories where at the time I was working at, I forget which job I had at the time, but I mean, I would stay up so late, you know, and like people that I was hanging around with online would plan things the next day. You know, I would call in sick sometimes and, you know, play that game, which wasn't necessarily a good thing, but, you know, sort of what you see with kids these days, you know, you find their passions and you got to, like, make sure they're using it for the good, you know. So I was able to correct that. But anyway, you know, like, eventually there were some services that came out to connect people, you know, that were at home. And man, I played a lot on the service called 10, which was amazing. You know, you log into the service. I believe it cost like a couple of dollars a month to run their servers. Log in, you see game rooms, you can chat to people. They had a little bit of like stat rankings, you know, and that sort of went down. And then a new company called Kali came out and played on that. And then Quake came out, and of course that was huge. Played a lot of Quake, even with like my sister and her boyfriend at the time. That was awesome. I mean, so many games came out of Quake. Just totally getting off topic here, but played so many like mods, you know, like Action Quake and Team Fortress, and oh man, there was so many, some really good ones. But back to Duke 3D, you know, when I went to junior college, because I took about a year off after high school, wasn't too sure what I wanted to do. You know, at that time, I was all about just, you know, hanging out with your friends, you know, working. I wanted to fix up my car and, you know, all that kind of fun stuff, have a good radio system. So after about a year, I finally realized, you know, okay, let's go. You know, I think I want to do something with electronics, but more on the hardware side. So I went to a junior college, started my basics, and I took this robotics class, which was probably the best class I've had, hands down, because it was something I was interested in. It was hands-on. You built it from scratch. And then what really got me was you had to actually write code to tell this thing how to work. And that's kind of what sparked me to sort of pivot and change into software. Was, yes, it was awesome to, you know, we memorized all the, you know, the resistor color bands, and we were building all this stuff from scratch, and that is awesome. But what really got me for some reason was just the software, because, you know, I think it's the way that you solve problems in software, and the fact that you can write it once, you know, and sell it. You know, you write it once, you sell it, and it's sort of just, if it's good, you know, people just buy, and, you know, you support it. But anyways, so we learned to write assembly and C, and to do that, of course, we needed a computer lab. So we had this computer lab that probably had, what did it have? Maybe 486s? It might have been 386 too, can't remember. So I talked to my teacher, you know, me and a couple of friends of mine and so we said, hey, you know, if we're doing good, can we maybe install some games on your network, you know, and play after class? And it took a little bit of convincing. You know, my teachers were older guys, and, you know, one of them was so hilarious. He reminds me of Chevy Chase. Man, I would love to like see what he's doing. He was such a goofball. I mean, he just made the class fun. He always came in, he's like totally sunburnt because he played like golf the entire weekend. He was a smoker, so he's just like always outside. But anyways, you know, we finally convinced them, and they let us install Duke 3D on there. And this was back like, you know, did we have internet? I doubt we had internet at the school at the time. I can't remember. But the network infrastructure was, it's all coax cable, and you know, back then, you know, like actual coax cable would connect peer to peer with all the computers on the back. So anyways, we had some issues there we had to work through, but we finally got the games working, and man, we started, you know, breaking out the Duke 3D, which was pretty fun. And then we, you know, it'd been cool to see this go further too, but back then we were opening up the the Duke 3D editor, and we're sort of playing around in that, which blew all of our minds because none of us, Duke 3D and Quake and all that, like those were the first sort of 3D games we had ever really played, outside of, like Mario 64 or something like that. But it's not like kids today where everything they do is in 3D. They live in 3D, they play games in 3D, you can watch movies in 3D. So that editor was just mind-blowing. It's like, man, what is this, But, so anyways, enough about that. What other internet stuff? I certainly remember, like Erwin was saying, Netscape with frames. Man, I was a big Netscape Navigator fan. I just love, double-clicking on that, sort of like these other brands that do it really well. Just, you launch Netscape, it's got that sweet animated logo. The logo was in the browser itself. I was a big fan of that, just Netscape in general. But, I got into writing website stuff back then. JavaScript gets announced and you're starting to play around with JavaScript. Java, I remember Java coming out, and my best friend in college, Louis, me and him just jumping into that and getting all in depth in there. And Java releases the Swing SDK, which is like a graphical sort of development kit, and then they come out with 3D, which really got us. So we started making like a 3D engine and started playing around with all that. It was a lot of fun. Let's see. What else about the internet days? I mean, who can forget like Xbox Live? I mean, Xbox Live was just so important in the video game industry when it came out. It just changed the way we play games, the way we can play together now. PS2 came out with an online service as well, but just nothing like Xbox Live. Like those guys at Microsoft deserve so much credit for just driving that. Say what you will about Xbox Live today or Microsoft or whatever, but they were some super crazy pioneers back then with what they delivered. So I definitely remember that. Let's see. Who can forget Winamp, internet radio stations. Yeah, Winamp was awesome, man. Such a great player and organizer for your music, and the themes that people would make were just ridiculously awesome. Let's see, I'll never forget the first time, my dad got that 386. He had no experience with a computer, like zero. So, his typical day was get up early. He was a welder. He worked for a electrical company out in Abilene. You'd get up early, make a coffee, read the paper, and with the computer, I was able to teach him how to use it, teach him how to log in, because you actually had to click to connect to the internet. Not like computers today, they're automatically connected, So, he wrote down wrote his notes down on like, here's how you check the news, turn the computer on, double click this, get on the internet, and it was awesome when he was, I would get up and he's sitting there at the computer with his coffee and he's reading the news, and I'd be around him a couple times and he's talking me up, yeah, Scott, show me how to use a computer, blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, I'll never forget that. Yeah, let's see, what time is it? It is, okay, we're close to work, getting there. Let's see, what else about the internet? Who remembers GeoCities? Some of those early like free websites. That's basically like WordPress and Weebly of today. People make these GeoCities websites, and you go in there and you make your own website. And of course, had like the blinking text and animated under construction logos and all that good stuff. But there was no like custom URL, so like you want to share your GeoCities, it's like www.geocities.com / like a community name / like a bunch of numbers. It was so terrible, but everybody used it, And then you think about Yahoo, when Yahoo came on and changed the way that we searched. We had all kinds of search engines back then. And then they got into communication. We had Yahoo chat rooms, which were crazy. Like we had some crazy conversations back in the day about just all kinds of things. And they were like real conversations. It wasn't like the internet today where everybody's just, man, they're just, I don't know what's up with people today. They want to be jerks, you know, and just so negative. But back then and there was you know, it happened occasionally, but it was more just fun and sometimes serious conversations about all kinds of subjects, and you see people pop in and out and all that. But that was really cool. You know, I'd get lost in that sometimes. And then, you know, applications like ICQ come along, and again, that was another one where, you know, I remember going to different family members' house, and again, I put on my dad's computer, you know, obviously to talk to him, but just, you know, helping that program spread by word of mouth, like, hey, man, we could totally just like talk on the computer whenever we want, and it'll alert you and all that kind of stuff. ICQ was amazing. That had a lot of classic sounds that, you know, you just can't forget, like when you got a message. And who can forget like the little animating green flower and all that good stuff. Of course, that morphed into all kinds of other chat applications, and eventually got pared back down by other apps that were trying to wrangle that, you know, like Trillion and all that good stuff. Kind of just jumping around here, apologize for that, just as it hits me. You know, so back to the computer equipment, you know, I can remember going from the 486, I think we had a couple of versions of the 486, and I remember, you know, preparing for college and telling my mom, you know, after, you know, we went down and visited the college in Phoenix. I went to software engineering school over there, and, you know, we were talking about, hey, I need a laptop, and talking to my dad, and they went and bought me this laptop, and it was a Pentium. It was the first ever Pentium 66, I believe, or 100, or I can't remember what it was, but it was like so much faster than my computer at home. It was amazing. So I remember installing, I think it was Quake at the time on there the first time, and just, whoa, this game is like, it's a totally different game when you have a computer that's actually responsive, you know. You know, I think about other firsts too, like the first 3D accelerated card, you know, like the first time I got like a 3D effects card, or what was it? There was another one. I can't remember. But anyways, you know, the first time you put in a 3D effects card and you play the game and you see like the game, it was amazing. Like, it was crazy. And it was real goofy back then too, you know, because certain apps would support it or not. You didn't know who supported it. You know, games like Quake, you had like different versions of the game, you know, you had to run. But man, that was awesome. Oh yeah. So who remembers buying, you know, video game magazines? Not necessarily to read the articles, but just to get the CD that was in there, so you didn't have to download. I mean, our download speeds were so terrible, you don't understand. Like, you know, I would happily pay, you know, they were a little bit cheaper then too. They were like $5 or $6 an issue, but man, everybody bought those because you wanted all those demos and games on there, so you did not have to wait for the download. Did that quite a lot. Let's see, you know, who remembers like their first LAN event where you go and take your computer and stay overnight? You know, my first one was in college, probably around 97, back in Arizona. You know, we all took our PCs out. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Phoenix LAN. I have to look that up and put that on there, but Omega LAN, I think is what it was. And they had, you know, gas generators to make sure, you know, we had enough power and power didn't go out. Man, that was awesome to like lug your computer, you know, which was like a big old CRT monitor and big heavy old computer, metal case and all that. And man, we just geeked out and played games all night. You know, traded stuff all night. And that was my first ever, I think, like in-person video game competition. We had I participated in the Tribes event. I got first place in that, won a couple of things. I think I have an old picture of my sort of card that I used to get in with my cool little old school gamer tag that was Menace and alternating caps and had all these other symbols in it. But yeah, 1997, we were playing Tribes and a few other games and having competitions, you know. There was, you know, I think we had one guy on the microphone that was kind of hyping it up between the games, you know, and I really don't remember if he commentated during the match, but it was awesome, man. We had a lot of fun back then, and you know, I wish we would have kept going a little more with that, and you know, that was definitely something I probably could have helped push along as well. But it's heads down in software, and I'm glad I did too, you know, because that took me to great places too. But you know, I wish I would have had a little more free time to see what I could do to volunteer for that effort and keep pushing that forward. Oh yeah, one more thing. I was just talking to my daughter about this. You know, talking about our slow, terrible internet back in the day. You know, who remembers like interlaced images where, you know, as soon as you load a page, or very quickly, you know, as soon as you load a page, you would see text, the alternate text, and then very quickly after, you would see like an image sort of stream in, just like today we do with videos. You know, like Netflix will try to play the video as fast as it can, and then the quality will increase as it sort of buffers and catches up. But I mean, gosh, who remembers like waiting for a page to load? You know, you're starting to read the text and you still can't see what the image is, and you're reading around the image, and then bloop, 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 you know, little by little, it's like, oh, okay, that's the image. And, you know, maybe it's a car, whatever it is you're interested in, you can right click on save the image, but you had to sit there and wait. That bad boy had to load up. Pretty crazy. But, yeah, you know, thanks for the chat. You know, this, like I said, this keeps me sane on my work commute, you know, and maybe you guys will find it useful as well. So yeah, let me know what you think. I would love to read comments and stories, or, you know, link your YouTube videos or blogs or anything you have. I'd love to read about like what you remember from what you consider, you know, old school internet. There's just so many great stories, and you know, we need to keep that in mind as we move forward. You know, it's really easy to complain about a particular service, like, you know, this internet service provider is terrible because this one day for like 2 hours we had an issue. Like, keep that in perspective. I mean, look back at where we came from and where we are today. Like, we're pretty advanced, you know. Let's not forget that. Let's not be a people of complainers, you know. Like, let's keep pushing forward. Let's appreciate, let's remember where we came from and be happy, you know. What else do I want to mention too? I don't want to get into it, but you know, this is coming up. We need to really understand net neutrality. If you don't know what that is, please YouTube it. Please Google it. Like, understand it, and figure out where you're at on that fence. You know, and make your voice heard, because it's really important that we, as a people, we come together and actually voice our opinion. And again, voice your opinion. Don't be, you know, don't listen to just one person and just, okay, you know, I agree with him, I'm just going to do whatever he says. Really think about it. Like, what do you want, you know, because it really matters to sort of vote in a way that reflects how you think, not necessarily how somebody you admire or follow thinks or whatever. So that's all I want to say. You know, just read up on net neutrality, become involved on either side. Just become involved. All right. Until next time, thanks for hanging out. Appreciate it. We'll see you around.